Good morning, everyone. How are you guys doing today? Welcome to Denver. I've got an exciting talk for you today. So my name is Joey Zacherl, and I'm here with Rook, where we build infrastructure that enables users to capture the value in their transactions. And so before I get started on the presentation, I'll give you a little background about myself, and it'll come full circle right into the presentation, which is really exciting. So I am an engineer at heart, so I have a background at engineering, automation, and I really just love building things. I've spent some time doing some cybersecurity as well, and fun facts about myself. So I was the very first market maker on Ethereum on decentralized exchanges, and I've actually been involved in MEV before it even had a name and before anyone was even talking about it in any sort of public forum, writing any articles on it at all. And so before I got into crypto, I was actually doing some automation with my hobbies, and I've always liked building things and doing fun things. And I love playing video games. I love strategy games, card games. So I used to play a lot of poker. I made like online poker bots, and I made some really cool bots and HUDs for video games for like MMOs that would like farm in-game resources. And it's exciting how like those things transitioned really well into automating on the blockchain, right? When you think of searchers and arbitrage and builders, that stuff really all goes hand in hand. And when I first decided to transition my career into the blockchain space, I saw a huge need for liquidity. So when the first decentralized exchanges came online, there was no liquidity, and the first handful of them couldn't get off the ground because a user would log into the app and try to start using it, but they didn't have a trading partner. And that was one of my first experiences when Ethereum came out, was seeing that there was no trading partner. The order books were just a barren wasteland. And that's really what motivated me to get involved. And so what is MEV? I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with it, but MEV is essentially value that you can extract from block production. And this could come in the form of arbitrage, front-running, back-running, rearranging transactions, rearranging entire blocks, anything that you can use to extract value from other people's transactions. And in DeFi, there is a lot of value in MEV, and your transactions have value whether you know it or not. So you might just be performing a trade, buying a token, or maybe you're submitting a transaction to the mempool, and all of a sudden somebody makes money off your transaction. It just so happens that there's been about $700 million being made off of transactions on Ethereum. And we at Rook believe that everyone deserves the value that they create from their own transactions. From the casual traders just buying a token on 1inch, to the whales who are making $1 million trades, even DeFi projects and DAOs, they also deserve it as well. And there could be a DAO that's, say, rebalancing assets in their treasury. And the one that I find most fascinating is actually the blockchain service providers. They provide services that other people use to capture MEV. But the reality is every single one of these groups are getting wrecked by MEV, right? A user who's just trying to buy a token, they might get sandwich attacked. The whale, he might get backrun because he makes $1 million trade, and that has ripple effects on the AMMs, and other people are making money off of that. And then a DAO, maybe they're trying to rebalance assets in their treasury. Other people can front run them because they pay attention to governance and they know when that's going to happen. And the blockchain service providers, they build these amazing tools that do amazing things, but they're not getting paid when other people use their tool to make money. And this number is growing, right? This $700 million number is only going to get bigger. And so where did this all begin, and how did this come about? So today, what I'm going to present to you guys is essentially a timeline, and we're going to understand how MEV came about, what caused it, what started it, what happened during this long timeline. I mean, we're talking many, many years of evolution of MEV, and then we're going to take a look at where it's going and why. And so before I jump in, I want to focus quickly on Bitcoin and Ethereum. So with Bitcoin, you essentially have a decentralized currency and database, and then Ethereum took it one step further, right? Vitalik said, hey, I want to create programmable money. I want to have smart contracts that anybody can make and deploy. And with it came this vision for programmable money, which really relies on these fundamental items here, right? Decentralization, removing middlemen, and users interacting with users on the blockchain. So keep that in mind as we progress here. And we're going to start back in about the 2016, 2017 timeframe when the very first decentralized exchanges were coming online. And the first ones were absolutely terrible. They had bad UI UX, the contracts were very janky, they were not user-friendly, and they didn't have any liquidity. EtherDelta was actually the first one that gained any traction whatsoever. This sort of thing was incredibly eye-opening to me because I saw the potential, right? There's a lot of value in decentralized trade. The ability for two parties to swap assets without trusting each other, knowing that it's going to work exactly based on how the smart contract was designed, is an incredibly powerful thing. But this actually led to a lot of very, very unique events, right? So in 2017, the ICO boom was really in full season. And this concept of ICO arbitrage became a thing where people would buy a token on an ICO, they would put it on the secondary market to sell it, and other people would actually buy it. And it was fascinating. And at first I was wondering, like, why would anybody do that? Why wouldn't they just buy from the ICO? But the reality is this, ICOs were a pain in the ass. They had KYC, they required, your driver's license, all this information. Sometimes they only supported certain countries, and sometimes people didn't want to buy it from an ICO because they didn't want to have any association with it in case, the legal situation changed in the future, right? So there was huge demand for people to overpay on really shitty exchanges like this one, and then there was a lot of arbitrage, and that actually led to market manipulation and order book manipulation. So if you take a look at this order book here, people would actually manipulate the order book because back in the day, this website would only show 200 buy orders and 200 sell orders. So people would get smart and they would fill it with bullshit orders that would never get filled, and humans couldn't arbitrage it, only bots could arbitrage it. It was a really fascinating experience. And there were also typo orders where people would not use the website properly and they'd put in the wrong number. And I saw this as a huge opportunity to basically use my automation skills to provide liquidity. And that was really exciting. And another fun fact, the very first two decentralized exchange protocols I integrated with and market made on, both of them succeeded. Every one that I didn't, they fell flat. There's a good look at how bad that UI is. Imagine trying to trade on that thing. Shortly thereafter, the AMM was born, and AMMs are fantastic. So think of an AMM as Uniswap, if you're not familiar with them. Basically, it's an automated market maker. And the idea here is, why have a market maker who's making orders, buys, and sells, when you could just have an algorithm do it or a formula do it? And Bancor initially pioneered it, and then Uniswap took it one step further, made it more gas efficient, made it simpler and easier to use. And this led to massive arbitrage opportunities because somebody would come on Uniswap and they would try to buy a token, but in the reality, the best price was actually on Bancor or maybe EtherDelta. And so a robot would come along and arbitrage them and take money from them, essentially. Users didn't know how to, find the best price. And then this also led to liquidity providers getting front run as well. So liquidity providers would deposit liquidity, and other people would manipulate their deposit in the mempool, that sort of thing. And then when ICOs kind of started to phase out, people actually started launching tokens on Uniswap. So now instead of having an ICO, why deal with KYC and centralized exchanges when you could just literally deploy your token right on Uniswap? But the reality is, even with this new technology, users were still getting wrecked, and the UI UX was awful. But it did introduce the slippage mechanic, which was really cool, but another way for them to get attacked in front run. So then, around the same time, we saw essentially an MEV Arms Race occurring. And so what happened is, smart people who were building smart contracts and trading and trying to capitalize on this value, they were focusing on gas efficiency. Gas efficiency became king. Along with that came gas tokens. Mempool became extremely valuable and actually weaponized. So users who put their transactions in mempool had no idea, but they were getting exploited every single day. Mempool became extremely valuable. That led to things like gas auctions, and really at the end of the day, predators were sharpening their teeth, sharpening their tools, and just destroying everybody without even knowing it. All while UI UX was still terrible. And in 2018, we got to see the experience of cascading MEV. So the very first collateralized loan decentralized protocols came out, and that came with a liquidation feature. And the liquidation feature was really cool, but that led to this interesting behavior to where a liquidation would occur, a massive one, and some bot would arbitrage that on Uniswap or Bancor or EtherDelta, and that would have these cascading effects where arbitrage would ripple over 4, 5, 6 blocks, and there would just be arbitrage everywhere, all because one dude's position got liquidated. And then in 2018, the flash loan was born. And the flash loan is a really cool feature. So if you're not familiar with it, basically what it is when you're trading, you need money to trade. But what if you don't have money, right? Well, you can borrow it, perform a trade, and then essentially capture MEV and then repay that loan in the same exact transaction as if nothing ever happened. So it's kind of like printing money in the blink of an eye and then returning it as if it was never printed. And the use cases for this are actually great. There's a lot of great use cases for it, but there's also some really bad use cases, and people were essentially using them maliciously to exploit protocols. And there was actually one protocol in particular that was exploited 3 or 4 times before it just died. And as you can see here, so during 2020, there were about 16 flash loan related exploits for about $100 million. So flash loans are very powerful tools. So then in 2019 and still today, this is being iterated on, the DEX aggregator was born. And DEX aggregators are great because it enables users to find the best price and discover the best price and make sure they're making a good trade. But what's interesting is this actually led to even more attack vectors, because now if someone's going to backrun you, they can also target these DEX aggregators. And also too, the algorithms just weren't perfect, and even today they're still not necessarily perfect. So, there's always value that can be extracted. And now the DEX aggregators also have the slippage variable, which can be exploited, can be sandwich attacked, right? So there's still more variables. So it's kind of like an improvement, but many, many more variables and many, many more attack vectors. So overall, it didn't really help too much in terms of MEV. So 2019 was a big moment here because this paper was published, and this was really the first time that the MEV discussion was kind of brought to the forefront, right? So it had existed for years, but now it's actually being talked about and actually being thought about and actually being discussed as a problem, right? And so in this paper, they really highlighted it as essentially leading to consensus instability, because MEV essentially incentivizes actors to reorder transactions and blocks, and that could be very, very bad for the ecosystem. And again, this is the first time it was really talked about in the open. And that really led to the natural progression of co-founding Rook. And the interesting thing is here, the public discussion was focused around consensus instability and protecting, the blockchain, but really nobody was looking at the user. Nobody gave a shit that the user was getting wrecked. Nobody at all. And so that was really the heart of Rook, right? So I'm focused on the user. I want to build something to protect the user, because at the end of the day, the MEV is coming out of the user's pocket, but nobody was really focused on that at all, right? And so you obviously want both, right? You want consensus stability and you want the user to be taken care of, right? And so the idea is, with Rook is we want searchers, which are these arbitrage bots, to collaborate with users and work together instead of working against each other. And interesting fact, Rook is the oldest MEV project in existence, and our team is actually built from the community. So a lot of our core team members were actually literally popping into our Discord one day, hey, this is cool, I want to work on this. Oh, what do you do? And then, the conversation starts and, okay, let's hire you, this is perfect. That's literally how our team started. So in 2020, transaction bundling became a thing, and this is essentially a lower level protocol layer feature that enables people to conveniently reorder transactions and reorder blocks. And it's a nice tight integration between the searcher and the block validator. And the idea here was to use MEV to prevent consensus instability. And this was really a direct response to the Flash Boys 2.0 paper. But the idea that you're using MEV to protect that layer, it doesn't really help the user, right? MEV is flowing, to the block producers, not the users, and that's a problem. So Rook is actually very complementary with transaction bundling, because Rook can protect you at the application layer, and then you can use tools like transaction bundling at the protocol layer. And then around 2021, we actually saw the arms race of bots progressing. And bots were getting very, very greedy, and they were using very risky strategies, and you actually saw bots battling other bots. So they would use some risky strategies, and other bots would exploit them and essentially take money from a bot while that bot was trying to take money from a user. And oftentimes, maybe the first bot was actually, pretending to be a user, that sort of thing. And right around the same time, too, Rook, we built the very first MEV-protected trading app and lending platform. And then in 2022, we launched the very first order flow auction, which is really exciting. And that essentially provides a marketplace for users and searchers to collaborate. Rather than battling against each other, you work together and you have a better environment. And this came with built-in protection that ensured that builders or validators or any predator could not steal MEV from users. And this led to some spectacular case studies. So in this example, you can see here 4 searchers are essentially bidding on the right to facilitate the user's transaction. So the user says, hey, I want to buy these tokens. 4 different searchers said, I'm willing to pay this much to the user in order to fill his trade. And then the algorithm decides who the winner is. And then this is more recent. So now we're in 2022, 2023, right? So this is within the last few months. So PBS was introduced along with proof of stake, where builders can construct blocks and make bids for inclusion, and then the proposers can validate them and select the highest bidder. And this makes for an exciting new marketplace, and it opens the door to a lot of new features, but the problem is this doesn't really address the user getting ripped off or losing out on MEV, right? So this bid mechanism is essentially a highway for that behavior to still occur. So it doesn't protect the user at all. And then, so really, at the end of the day, if we look at today, there's transaction reordering, there's MEV everywhere, all while the user is getting wrecked. And a lot of MEV solutions that exist today do not provide any value to the user whatsoever. So what are we going to do about this? This is a big problem, right? Well, let's take a look back at the vision for programmable money. The reality is the status quo of MEV does not behave this way. It's not decentralized, and there are middlemen extracting your value. So what do, right? There are a lot of opinions about MEV and about how to solve it. But the reality is, it may not be solvable, right? Attempting to solve MEV may be the same as attempting to solve gravity. And so maybe it can't be solved. So if you're not going to solve it, what are you going to do about it? Well, you need to put the user first. That's what you're going to do, right? But in order to put the user first, you have to understand how we're currently not putting the user first. So currently, users aren't getting the best transaction execution. There's value being taken from them. And in the worst case scenario, they're actually being hunted and preyed upon by predators. And that's bad. Developers tend to not focus on the user. They tend to focus on other actors. And users are not receiving the value that they create in their transaction. And the reality is, from day one, Rook has been focused on providing value to the user, and it's great to see other people in the industry and other projects in the industry come around to this vision, because for a long time that wasn't the case. So what does it look like when you put a user first? Well, so you are in control of your transaction lifecycle. Searchers and builders, they actually work for you, not against you. And the MEV that you create flows back to you exactly as you see here. And your transaction execution is optimized for very useful things that you're going to do on a daily basis. Signed commitments, raw transactions, and token swaps. And what does that look like in practice? Well, during 2022, with our limit order feature, we did $400 million of volume, and we actually returned $400,000 in value to users. And we've found that this value scales with volume too, which is fantastic. Running out of time here, so I'm gonna skip a little bit. So, and here's an example where a whale was trading $80 million, and he actually came back with $60,000 of profit, essentially. He got paid $60,000 to make his trade. And so these benefits that you can give to users, you can also give these same benefits to service providers, right? It's fantastic. So if you're providing a service, if you're a developer and you provide infrastructure as a service to users, you can give that as a feature to your users, and that value can flow back to you. And if this is valuable for you as a developer, you can actually charge a fee for this, and that fee can go on this same value stream. And we call that regenerative economics, because this isn't the user paying a monthly fee. This isn't a subscription model. It's essentially the user using this tool and using this feature, and then as a result of that, value is created, and it's going back to the service provider. So everybody wins. And this benefits the ecosystem, because the ecosystem is made up of users and developers. And so we believe that everybody deserves the value that they create. So we are the first ones to introduce a mechanism to benefit the users and drive value to them. So over the last year, we've taken what we've learned, we've scaled it up, we've made it safer, more efficient, and more programmable. And our team consists of some of the best mechanism designers in the entire industry, some of the best MEV engineers in the entire industry. And we are very excited to bring these products to you guys very soon. So thank you so much for today. I appreciate you guys coming out and listening to the chat. So get in touch with us. Our booth is literally right behind you right there. So come chat with me, come chat with the team. We've got a big team here today. So thank you guys. Appreciate it.